Have you ever thought about how different your life could have been if you had simply been born somewhere else? I don't mean if you had moved somewhere later in life, I mean from the very beginning. Imagine that instead of being born where you were born in a completely different country, different parents, different language, different school, different friends, different traditions, different weather, even different food. Would you still be you? I was thinking about this the other day, and honestly, the more I thought about it, the more confused I became. Because my first instinct was to say, of course, I'd still be me. But then I started asking myself, what does that actually mean? When we say this is just who I am, how much of that is really us? And how much is everything you've been surrounded by since the day we were born? For example, think about your favorite food. Do you genuinely love it because it's the best food in the world? Or do you love it because it's what you grew up eating? If I'd been born in Japan, maybe I would think completely different about breakfast. If I'd been born in Italy, maybe pasta would feel as normal to me as a sandwich. If I'd grown up somewhere else, maybe I'd never even try the foods I eat today. It's funny because we all think our way is just normal. But normal is such a strange word. What's normal to me could seem completely unusual to someone else, even the way we greet people. Some cultures hug, some shake hands, some bow, some kiss each other. Imagine doing the wrong one in the wrong country. It would probably be awkward. But nobody wakes up thinking, today I'm going to follow my culture. They just do what they've always done. And that's what fascinates me. So much of our life feels like a choice, but maybe it never really was. Even something as simple as the way we celebrate birthdays. Some people have huge parties, some people keep it very quiet, and some people don't celebrate it at all. None of those people think they're strange, they're just living the life they'd always known. The more I think about it, the more I realize how much of my life probably feels automatic. I don't question it because I've never had a reason to. And then I started thinking about personality. This is where it gets really interesting. Let's say someone tells you they're shy. Are you naturally shy, or did they grow up in an environment where speaking too much wasn't encouraged? Maybe someone who's incredibly confident had parents who always told them their opinions matter. Maybe someone who's quiet spent years being interrupted. Maybe someone who's funny grew up in a family where everyone joked around at the dining table. We often act like personality is something we are simply born with, and maybe part of it is. But I can't help wondering how much of it is quietly shaped by the people around us. Think about children. Children don't arrive in the world knowing what's embarrassing or what's fashionable or what's considered successful. They learn it little by little without even noticing. Someone tells them to say thank you. Someone teaches them how to behave at school. Someone explains what's polite and what's rude. Someone tells them what a good job looks like, someone what happiness is supposed to look like, and eventually those ideas become part of who they are. Not because they chose them, because they inherited them. It's almost like every one of us is handed an invisible instruction manual without even realizing it. And for years, we've just followed it. Sometimes we never even ask who wrote it. I think one of the biggest moments in life is when you realize that not everyone received the same manual. I remember when I first started meeting people from completely different backgrounds. At first, I noticed obvious things: different accents, different food, different holidays. But after a while, I started noticing something much deeper. People didn't just do different things, they thought differently, they solved problems differently, they spoke to their parents differently, they looked at money differently. Even the definition of success wasn't the same. For one person, success meant owning a business. For someone else, it meant having enough free time to enjoy it. Neither person was wrong. They had simply grown up living different things. Very important. And honestly, I found that really refreshing because it made me realize there isn't just one correct way to live. Sometimes we spend so much energy trying to fit into an idea of what life should look like. But who decided that? Who decided what age we are supposed to get married, or buy a house, or have children, or change careers, or stop wearing certain clothes? If you had been born somewhere else, those invisible deadlines might not even exist. You might never feel behind because you'd be measuring your life using completely different rules. Isn't that strange? The same age, the same dreams, but a completely different feeling about where they are in life. Just because they were born somewhere else. And that makes me wonder how many of our worries don't actually belong to us? How many are simply borrowed from the culture we've grown up in? I honestly don't know the answer, but I think it's worth thinking about. You know what I find really interesting? Two children can grow up in exactly the same house with the same parents, eat the same dinner, go to the same schools, and somehow become completely different people. One becomes really outgoing, the other is quiet. One loves taking risks, the other likes to plan everything. One wants to travel the world, and the other never wants to leave their hometown. How does that happen? If our environment shapes us so much, why don't brothers and sisters end up exactly the same? I don't think there is a simple answer. Maybe we are all born with something that's already ours: a certain personality, a certain way of looking at the world. But then life starts adding layers. Every friendship changes us a little. Every teacher leaves something behind. Every heartbreak teaches us something. Every success gives us confidence. Every failure changes the way we see ourselves. It's almost as if we are constantly being edited without realizing it. And the strange thing is, most of the time, we don't notice it's happening. Think about yourself 5 years ago. Would you recognize that version of yourself? Maybe you would, but I bet there are things you used to believe that you don't believe anymore. Maybe you used to care so much about what people thought. Maybe you worried about fitting in. Maybe you wanted a completely different career. Maybe you thought happiness looks a certain way, and now maybe none of those things matter as much. So, if we can change that much in just a few years, imagine how different you would be in our entire life. Sometimes I wonder how much of our own personality comes from the place I've lived. If I'd stayed in one place forever, would I think differently? Would I notice different things? Would different conversations interest me? Moving to another country is strange because at first you realize just how many little things you've already taken for granted, things you never even noticed before. The way people queue, the way strangers smile or they don't smile, the jokes people make, the small talk, or the way neighbors in something as simple as saying thank you can be done differently. Then slowly it becomes normal, and one day you catch yourself doing those same things without thinking. That's the part of the conversation that amazes me. Human beings are incredibly acceptable. We get used to almost anything, which makes me wonder how much of who we are is fixed and how much is simply what we've adapted to. Then there's a social media. I think this has changed all of us, whether we realized it or not. Years ago, most people compared themselves with their neighbors, classmates, or colleagues. Now we compare ourselves with people living thousands of miles away, people we've never met, people whose lives have been carefully edited before we even see them. Sometimes I catch myself thinking, why don't I have that? And then I stop and remember I'm comparing my ordinary Tuesday afternoon with someone else's best 5 seconds. That's not real life, but our brains still react to it as if it is. If you've been born, your worries would probably be different. Your dreams might be different too. Isn't that incredible? The years we born shapes us almost as much as the place we are born. Sometimes people say you can be anything you want. I understand why they say it. It's encouraging. But I also think life is more complicated than that. Luck matters, opportunity matters, the family you're born into matters, the country you've been born in matters, meeting the right person at the right time matters. Even something as random as being in the right place on the right day can completely change the direction of your life. I don't think we talk about luck enough, not because hard work isn't important. It absolutely is, but two people can work equally hard and still have completely different opportunities. And recognizing that doesn't take anything away from success. If anything, I think it makes us more grateful. It also makes us a little kinder because we never really know what path someone else has had to walk. Maybe the person who's struggling isn't lazy. Maybe they've simply had challenges we've never experienced. Maybe the confident person spent years building that confidence. Maybe the quiet person has thoughts they never feel comfortable sharing. We see such a tiny part of people's lives, yet we make huge assumptions about them. The more I get older, the more I realize about how little I actually know about anyone. And honestly, I think that's a good thing. It reminds me to stay curious instead of simply deciding who someone is. I like wondering how they became that person, what happened to them, who encouraged them, what dreams did they have when they were younger, what made them change direction. Every single person has a story that nobody else can see. Maybe that's why I enjoy people watching so much. You can sit in a cafe for half an hour and watch hundreds of people walk past. Every one of them is living a completely different life. They all have different worries, different memories, different plans for tomorrow. And every single one of them probably believes their way of living is normal. Just like I believe mine is, I think That's one of the most beautiful things about being human. We are all living completely different version of life, yet somehow we still understand each other enough to connect. Maybe that's because underneath all the differences, we all want similar things: to feel safe, to feel understood, to laugh, to love people, and to be loved back, to feel like our life means something. And maybe that's the part I keep coming back to. If we had been born somewhere else, we would almost certainly speak a different language, eat different food, celebrate different holidays, and probably have completely different opinions about a lot of things. But would the person underneath really disappear? I'm not sure. I don't think anyone can answer that question. Sometimes I think about all the tiny moments that completely change a person's life. Meeting someone by chance, choosing a different university, missing a train, accepting a job, saying yes to an invitation you almost cancelled. At the time, they feel like such ordinary decisions. Then years later, you realize your entire life changed because of one small moment. If you had said no instead of yes, maybe your life would look completely different today. Maybe you would have different friends, maybe you would live in another city, maybe you would never have met the person you love. Maybe you would have a completely different career. It's a strange how we only notice those turning points when we look backwards while we are living them. They just feel like another Tuesday. And then I started thinking about something else. We spend so much time trying to figure out who we are. People ask questions like, what's my purpose? Or who am I really? But maybe there isn't just one version of us waiting to be discovered. Maybe there are hundreds. Maybe life isn't about uncovering one true personality. Maybe it's about growing into different versions of ourselves depending on the experience we have. Think about it. You're probably a slightly different person with your family than you are with your closest friends. You're probably different at work than you are at home. You're probably different now than you were 10 years ago. Does that mean one version is fake? I don't think so. I think they're all real. They're just different parts of the same person, and maybe that's what makes people so interesting. We are not finished. We are never really finished. Every book we read changes us a little. Every conversation changes us. Every country we visit, every mistake we make, every person we lose, every person we meet. Even this conversation we are having right now might leave one small idea in your mind that stays there for years. I think that's quite amazing. It means we are always becoming someone new, sometimes without even noticing. I also think we underestimate how much courage it takes to question the things we've always lived in. It's comfortable to think our way is the right way. It's comfortable to stay inside what's familiar. But every now and then, it's healthy to stop and ask ourselves, why do I believe this? Did I choose this opinion or did I inherit it? There's nothing wrong with keeping the same beliefs after asking those questions. But I think it's important that they are actually beliefs, not just ideas we've repeated. Because we've heard them our whole lives. One of the things I love most about living in a big city is hearing so many different languages in a single day. Sometimes I'll be walking through a park or sitting on the train and I'll hear conversations in languages I don't understand. Years ago, I might have just walked past without thinking about it. Now it makes me smile because every one of those conversations belongs to a completely different world. Different memories, different childhoods, different traditions, different stories. Yet we are all walking down the same street at the same time. I think that's beautiful. It's easy to forget how enormous the world is. Sometimes our own little routine becomes our whole universe. We wake up, go to work, come home, repeat, and without meaning to, we start believing that everyone else experiences life in the same way. But they don't. Someone somewhere is waking up to a life that's completely different from yours. Different worries, different dreams, different opportunities, different challenges. And somehow we are all trying to figure life out at the same time. I actually find that quite comforting. It reminds me that there isn't one correct way to live, there isn't one timeline, there isn't one definition of success. The older I get, the more I realize that life isn't a competition where everyone is running on the same track. It's more like millions of people walking on completely different paths. Some paths are straight, some are messy, some are full of unexpected turns. Some people reach their goals early, some much later, and some discover that the goal they were chasing wasn't actually what they wanted at all. That's okay too. Maybe that's why I like asking questions like this. Not because I expect to find the perfect answer, but because good questions make us look at life differently. And sometimes that's more valuable than having an answer. So, would you still be you if you'd been born somewhere else? I honestly don't know. Part of me thinks no. I think I'll probably have different habits, different beliefs, different dreams, different fears, even maybe a different sense of humor. But another part of me thinks there would still be something familiar underneath all those differences. Maybe not exactly the same person, but someone recognizable, someone who would still be curious, still searching, still trying to understand the world. And maybe that's enough. I love to know what you think. Do you think? Know what you think? Do you think we all become completely different people if we were born somewhere else? Or do you think there's something inside us that stays the same no matter where life begins? I've been thinking about this question for days and I still can't decide. Maybe that's why I wanted to share it with you. Not because I have the answer, but because sometimes the most interesting conversations start with a question that nobody can fully answer. Let me know your thoughts and see you in the next video. Please subscribe if you don't want to lose this channel. Bye.